people's personalities dictate the way that they absorb feedback. You have to deliver something differently to somebody who's naturally very defensive versus somebody who doesn't really pay very good attention versus somebody who is a sponge. And it's really critically important to be super direct and to leave no room for misunderstanding, and also to tailor your communication style to that individual. Very frequently, you got to prime someone, especially if you're giving them constructive criticism.
Welcome to Wisdom from the Helm, where we go beyond the typical highlight reels of real estate's most trusted women to reveal the secrets of their success, not just in business, but in life. And where the wisdom is as practical as it is inspiring. We're your hosts, Danielle Wilkie and Heather Frick, and today we're thrilled to welcome the CEO of Coldwell Banker Realty, Kamini Lane. Kamini is an exceptional leader and one that I had the good fortune of meeting and working with alongside at Compass. Her background as a CMO, as well as her executive leadership experience from both inside and outside of residential real estate, gives her an advantage when leading through the changes that are accelerating through our industry today. When I describe her to others, I always share that she is thoughtful, incisive, and strong, plus a great human being. So Kamini, thanks for being here today with us.
It is my absolute pleasure. I will take any excuse to spend time with you, Danielle Wilkie. You know that.
It's great. I know Heather's been eager to meet you. She hears us talk about you all the time. So we are so thrilled you are here. So we're just going to dive right in because an hour won't feel like enough at all. So we're just going to go right for it here. The first question we wanted to ask you was, what's one leadership lesson that you actually had to learn the hard way?
Truly diving right in. Leadership lesson that I had to learn the hard way. I think that there are two. One was sort of more practical, and one was kind of bigger. The first one was actually really early in my career. I had graduated from Harvard Business School. I was working at a company called Interbrand, doing brand strategy. And I really, really enjoyed parts of it. And I really didn't like parts of it. And, I was in my 20s and I dealt with it the way a lot of younger professionals do, which is I would crush it at the things I loved. And then the other stuff, I was like, I don't know, someone will do that, right? And I thought I was crushing it. And then I got my review, and my manager at the time accurately pointed out that I was crushing it at the things that I enjoyed and that I ignored the things that I didn't enjoy. And that actually is not functional. And, she sort of said, listen, like all of these things are your job. You can't just put your all into the things that you think are enriching and rewarding and fun and then expect somebody else to do the rest of it. That's not your job. And every job will have things that you do not enjoy doing. And I actually came sort of full circle on that as I matured throughout my career. And now the stuff that I don't enjoy as much, I tackle head on right away. And I never ignore that nagging voice that says, this has got to get done, right? Before the voice even gets to like a 5 on the volume scale, I just knock it out. And I found that, first of all, it's great for my peace of mind because you're never truly able to ignore something you're not getting done, right? Especially for us type A types. And then the second thing is it really unleashes my ability to be extra impactful on those things that I'm really passionate about. So I would say that was one kind of early lesson, whether you call it a leadership lesson or not, I'm not sure, but life lesson. And then I think the second one really was a leadership lesson. And that was during COVID, when we, and I mean that literally, had to make some really hard decisions about the business, about staffing, about salaries. And we had all the data, all the spreadsheets, all of the numbers of, that were used to categorize people, right? And we were supposed to make decisions, really hard decisions based on all of those spreadsheets. And I knew that that was what I was being asked to do, but I also just felt deep in my heart that I needed to be considering the actual people involved, and that I couldn't make decisions and sleep well at night if I just looked at the spreadsheet. And it really, it was hard because that was not a popular view. I think, just from a compliance standpoint and an HR standpoint and, defensibility standpoint, there was a lot of desire for decisions to be made on the spreadsheet. And, I really had to push hard to say, I'm going to add another lens here. And I just feel in my heart that that's the right thing to do. And I'm going to actually make these numbers on the spreadsheet humans, and I'm going to use that as part of my decision-making criteria. And it was not a popular decision at the time, but I think it really taught me, first of all, to trust my gut, right? And to know when to take a stand. And then secondly, and this is so critical to my leadership style, it is all about the individual people. It really is.
Mm. Mm. It's interesting. Heather and I were chatting before we got on, and we saw an article about your work with Liz Bentley and your DISC profile. And it was listed that you were high I think that it was. We got that right. And so that feedback doesn't entirely surprise me.
Yeah.
that was a leadership lesson for you. Yeah. Does that fit right when you think about your strengths?
I think so. Yeah.
And Kamini, how would you have done it before? Right? Like, was there a before times, right, where you would have maybe not have asserted that, hey, I'm going to bring a different point of view here, and I want to look at the humans, even in the face of this overwhelming pressure to just look at the numbers? Or is that something that you sort of innately always had? Okay.
No, I mean, I think that it comes down to confidence at the end of the day. And I think confidence is something that builds over time. It's like confidence and conviction, right? And I think at many different points in my career, I would have not had the confidence to, first of all, trust my gut and to say, like, I'm not making this up, right? I'm not wrong. Very simply, I'm not wrong here. And then also to not just trust my gut, but to be able to speak up and be strong in what I felt and advocate for my point of view. I really do think, particularly as a woman, it takes time and real life experience, and it takes real support infrastructure to get to the place where I could take that stand. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Going along with that, I've seen you operate in uncertainty and risk and navigate it well. But can you articulate for everyone else how you've ever taken a career risk that felt maybe uncertain at the time? And how did you navigate that?
Yeah. So I think I've taken a couple of career risks. The first was when I got into real estate. So most of my career had been spent in tech companies. I was at eBay for a long time. I was the chief marketing officer of a fashion technology startup. And I'd spent a lot of time in marketing and branding kind of in that context of tech companies. And then I was recruited by Compass, the real estate brokerage, to run the greater Los Angeles region. And it was so far outside of anything that I'd done before. I didn't know anything about real estate. Actually, at that time, I'd never bought or sold my own home. I'd only ever rented. I didn't even know what a real estate commission was. And so to jump in, and I had spent my career either as a consultant or as in-house marketing. I was the chief marketing officer of this fashion technology company called Tradesy. And so then not only was I jumping into a new industry, I was jumping into a brand new function as GM at the time. And so, yeah, it was a big risk. And it also came at a time of a lot of personal uncertainty. I had just lost my father to cancer. My mother was very, very sick. She had an illness and was actually living with me at the time. And I was a newly single mother to an 18-month-old. And so there was a lot going on personally. And so it on the surface, I think it would have made more sense to just keep the status quo and to lean into the stability in my life, which was my job that I knew that I enjoyed and I knew I was doing well at. But there was just something in me that said, actually, now is the time to leap forward. Because honestly, it was, first of all, just an incredible opportunity. But secondarily, because there was so much turmoil and frankly just sadness in my personal life at that time, I felt like I had to make a decision as to whether or not I was going to lean into opportunity and chance and change and embrace the possibility of something brighter, or was I just going to crisis manage? The second actually was more recent, which was when I was offered the job as CEO of Coldwell Banker Realty. I had been president of Sotheby's International Realty for about a year at that time. Loved that job. I mean, incredible brand, incredible people. Really, really enjoyed focusing on luxury real estate and was absolutely in a groove. And I was pregnant. and and so I was asked to consider taking the job by Ryan Schneider, CEO of Anywhere, and Suyana Cohn, CEO of Anywhere Brands and Advisors, the sort of real estate side of the brokerage specific side of Anywhere. And my gut at that time was, oh, absolutely not. I am pregnant later in life with my second child. I don't feel well. I mean, like I am exhausted. I am nauseous all the time. I would like a job where if I need to take a nap, I can do that. And I don't think if I take this job as CEO of Coldwell Banker Realty, I'm going to be able to take very many naps. and it really felt scary. It felt scary. And my instinct at the time actually initially was to say no. And then I really started thinking about the opportunity again. And it's never a convenient time to make a change. It's never easy time to take a leap. And so ultimately I said, I'm going to do this and I'm going to make it work for me. And I'm going to be really upfront about what I need and what I can do and what I can't do. I'm going to be really upfront about the fact that I am tired, and that's okay. Like it's hard work making a baby, and that's okay. And thankfully, luckily, I work for a company that embraces humans. And when I shared that I was expecting a child, there was nothing but support. And it was very much nothing but like, hey, if you can't travel, then don't travel. Do what you need to do in the way that feels right for you to be effective and impactful at this job.
I hope you wrote in a nap rider or something, to give yourself some space.
I did not write in a nap rider, but what I did do was put a couch in my office.
Perfect.
So, and I am, if sleeping was an Olympic sport, I would be Michael Phelps. I mean, it is like, it is talk about talent. I can fall asleep anywhere, anytime. I can full REM for 20 minutes and wake up feeling like it's a new day.
That is a true gift, Kamini. I mean, seriously, true gift. Question for you on those two big risks or leaps. A lot of times, it sounds like that was very natural. It came naturally to you. Maybe you had intuition or knowing. Others of us will sort of ruminate, right? And really need support or help or just some sort of catalyst. Like what was the thing for you? Was it a support group? Was it a coach? Was it your family? Like what kind of, or was it you internally? Like what was the thing that kind of guided you or gave you that knowing to make those two big changes?
So the second time around, with taking the job at Coldwell Banker Realty, it was my husband, who is the most amazing man on the planet. I'd say completely unbiasedly, and he is my most trusted advisor, and somebody who is able to stitch together all of the different sort of tangible and intangibles, the things that he knows that I'm not saying, the outside factors, and he thinks very differently than I do. So he's able to really bring perspective in decision making. And we talked it out. I mean, we just talked through it. And ultimately, as a family, decided that this was something that that made sense and that I should go for. The first time around, I did not actually have anyone to talk to at that point, and it really was just this deep internal feeling of I am at a crossroads right now in my life that is like represented by this decision that I need to make. Um, it was like the job thing was almost an analogy for everything else that was going on. And all I knew was that I needed to feel proud and excited about myself because everything else was just too depressing. And I know that sounds really sad, but it was really just like, my life is not great right now. It's really hard. And I have to feel proud of myself. And only I can do that. Only I can make that decision to be really proud of myself and to create like a well of inner strength that I was going to draw on. And I knew that only I could make that decision. And by the way, like none of it was like I woke up with an epiphany, right? It was not easy. It was a lot of back and forth and, a lot of ruminating for sure. And there was never, it wasn't like I knew beyond a shadow of the doubt what the right decision was. I just knew that I had to trust myself.
Kamini, one of the things that I always really respected when we were working together was how you like self-advocacy. I always thought you were very great at sort of like, no, like this isn't working for me, or this is a new way we could think about it, or whatever. But like not just like sitting along the sidelines and hoping someone figures it out, but really like owning it. So, a lot of women can struggle with self-advocacy for fear of judgment or criticism or what could come up the other side. So how do you coach your own women leaders to confidently own their value? Like what kind of recipe could you give to people who are looking for more of that?
Yeah, I think that a big piece of it is just leaning in and finding opportunities to solve problems and make an impact. And when you do that, you build up sort of this reserve of credibility because you build these artifacts, right? Like I did this, I solved this, I made an impact here. And you build up this kind of, library of things that you can call on, both when you need to actually articulate your value. Like I believe that my compensation should be adjusted to reflect market compensation and the impact I've had on the organization as exemplified by these 10 things that I now am pulling out of my library. It gets you noticed, right? And people notice when you jump out of your sandbox and you go look for problems to solve and ways to make an impact. Very tangibly because you are exposed to people outside of your immediate universe. And because when you're able to do that and do your day job, people in your universe notice. And then the last thing is that it can be a very rewarding and impactful kind of virtuous cycle. Because I think people, but women in general, are hesitant to speak up or take a stand because you're worried you're wrong. And or even if you know you're right, you're worried that somebody else will try to convince you and the people around that you're wrong. But once you build that library of artifacts of ways that you solve problems and made an impact, you have proof that you aren't wrong. And you draw on that to be able to speak up and say, hey, I think I actually have the answer here. And I feel confident that my answer is probably a good one because of all of this other impact that I've been able to make and all of these other times that I was right.
Yeah, I think this idea of sort of gathering evidence, our brains are so wired to pay so much more attention to the negative than the positive high value. And it's just so easy to skip over that, I think, especially as women in these higher positions and, earlier in your career. So you modeling that is really powerful. But on that note, I have a question on just this idea of feedback, right? And even just the word sometimes. I would do an exercise with my team sometimes to be like, raise your hand if feedback elicits like a stomach response for you. Like the word feedback is just like, and half the people would raise their hand. But I wonder just how, there's the positive side of feedback, appreciation, right? And really being intentional about that. And then there's the, how do I need to give feedback constructively to raise performance? And curious about how you've delivered that and evolved that over time with your team. And then also how you receive that, right? Like, how do you actually welcome and create that as a feedback loop?
Mm-hmm. I think that my style for delivering feedback has evolved um, around kind of the idea of understanding the human before you write the script. People's personalities dictate the way that they absorb feedback. So you have to deliver something differently to somebody who's naturally very defensive versus somebody who doesn't really pay very good attention versus somebody who is a sponge. And I think that it's really critically important to be super direct and to leave no room for misunderstanding and also to tailor your communication style to that individual. And I do think that very frequently you got to prime someone, especially if you're giving them criticism in the feedback, constructive criticism, room, areas for growth, however you want to phrase it, but like stuff that's hard. I think it's really effective to prime that person to listen. And a lot of the times, depending on the personality, that is like, hey, here's all the stuff that's going really, really well. And like, let me lay the foundation by saying, I believe in you. And I believe that you are the right person for this job and you're the right person to make an impact. And you're doing so in all these other areas. And that is so fantastic. Let's talk about how you could be even more effective. Let's talk about where I see some opportunities for you to change your style, change your approach, whatever it is, right? And I think that a lot of time, I mean, people are so afraid of getting fired. Like, let's be very clear about that. I don't know whether it was COVID or whether it's like knock-on effects of tumultuous economy, 2008, and then COVID. What I don't know why, but somehow it has become human nature to always think you're going to get fired. And that is true. I have found for people who are super senior and like all the way up and down the ranks. And so I really think that it's quite powerful to sort of relax people in the beginning to say, hey, the purpose of the conversation is this. I had to announce some org changes yesterday. And, you get on the call with folks and there's HR, there's me, there's their direct boss. And that they log on to Teams and they're like, oh, what is happening right now? So literally within 10 seconds, I always log on first. And within 10 seconds of that person getting on, I say, okay, the purpose of this call is to announce a reorg. That's why we're on today, right? We're just announcing some structural changes in the organization. And then they start listening because they're not afraid of getting fired. And so I really think, again, like priming people to listen based on what you know of their personality is a really important opener to giving feedback. Yeah. And then in terms of receiving feedback, that was your second question, right? Receiving feedback. I think I do the same for myself. I'm like, okay, I'm going into my annual review. I know that my boss is not a sugarcoater. I also know that she trusts me and believes in me. And I know that whatever she shares with me is truly in my best interest and in the best interest of the organization. And so I really need to listen. I need to listen and I need to think about how to use this feedback to better myself and better the organization. And if I want to be defensive and pissed off, then like, let me create a little area in my brain to do that once I've actually listened. And then I can say like, whatever, or,
Yeah.
whatever my defensive reaction might be. But to create space for me to have an emotional reaction if I need to, and then get over it and really take the lessons for what they are.
Yeah, I love that idea of creating that compartment. I call it going on the drama triangle, just to have the tantrum, if you want to,
Yeah.
and then also have the space for listening so you can have, you don't deprive your system of what it needs actually in that moment too. Yeah.
Yesterday we were just talking about the idea of like, how do you unhook from criticism, which kind of goes in this area. It's like, how do you find the places where you listen and there's value versus the places where there's not? And we were discussing the idea of, the importance of listening to like understanding who is giving you the feedback, thinking about like the context for that person, what is going on for that person around that feedback. And then deciding what makes sense and what doesn't based on how important that person's feedback is to like what you need to have happen. So we were saying like someone could tell you you're doing a terrible job and they maybe don't even work at your company. Do you care about that feedback? Probably not, But if your boss is sitting in front of you, do you ever find yourself thinking about that or using that tool in that way?
1,000%. Yes.
Okay.
And I think that what's really useful for me is parsing out what kind of care is going on, because I can, if I get feedback from somebody who has nothing to do with my work or my life or whatever, but has just decided to be a voice in my ear, I can care in that moment because maybe it just makes me upset and maybe I feel indignant and maybe it feels unfair, and that's okay. But I need to be able to parse apart the caring on an emotional level and the temporary nature of that, and vent. And I will call you sometimes, Danielle. I will call my husband. I will call my best friend, and I will vent about the indignity of it and then let it go, because it's like, okay, yes, I do care because this person made me mad. And no, I don't care because it actually has no impact on my life whatsoever besides this moment in time.
Yeah. 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 That's
What about from your team? How much, I think there's a lot of leaders who don't actually get feedback that's constructive or really open and candid from their team for various reasons, right? There's a lot of reasons, but how much of that do you receive, and what do you do to invite that or welcome that from others?
I find as you move up through an organization, that is one of the hardest things to cultivate. And particularly, at a CEO level, I say often to my peers, when was the last time somebody disagreed with you? Because if you can't think of the last time somebody disagreed with you, you're in big trouble. And I talk a lot about blind spots and echo chambers with my team. And I make it very clear that if everybody's yesing me, it is to everybody's detriment, because I am 1,000% not right all the time. It is literally impossible for me to be right all the time. And not only is that okay, I embrace that. So please disagree with me. And if you never disagree with me, I'm going to call you out for that. It's like, I try to create a very intentional, like inverse dynamic in that way, right? Of like, what do you really think? Because if I feel that you're BSing me, it's going to backfire. And so I think, and it is also about creating very intentional space for that by admitting when I'm wrong very publicly, and admitting when things have not gone my way very publicly. So to say, hey guys, that we decided to take a risk and go do this and it didn't work out, and let me tell you why. Or at the beginning of this conversation, my mind was set that this was the right way, but I'm really grateful because you all have convinced me that actually it's this other way instead. Or coming into a conversation and saying, I actually have no idea what the answer is, and maybe I'll think that I should have the answer right now, but I don't. So let's create that together. Let's create that certainty together.
All right, here's one that I'm really excited to hear from you on. Can you share a time when you felt underestimated or felt resistance in your career, and how did you overcome that?
Oh Lord. Yes. Yes, I can, Danielle. Yes. Yes, I can. Um, so after business school, I went into the agency world. So I worked for the Omnicom Group, which is a conglomerate of marketing, advertising, communications agencies, and spent about 10 years in that world. And um, I was working for a global digital marketing agency, and I had a pretty good run there. I was there for a number of years, and I'd done a number of different things. At one point, I'd come on as VP of strategy. At one point, I ran the whole strategy team. I moved over into the account management side. I called it business leadership and kind of reformed that team and led that team. And then I was tapped by my boss at the time he got promoted, and I was tapped to become the acting managing director of the Los Angeles office. And it was an incredible opportunity. I was really grateful, really excited. I sat on the North America leadership team with all of the other MDs of the bigger markets. But I didn't get the title, and I didn't get the raise. And after maybe, I don't know, 4 or 5 months, I sort of said, hey, what's happening here? And my boss looked really uncomfortable, and there was clearly something was going on, right? And he said, we have some hiccups, but we're going to figure it out. And I was like, what is going on? Something's going on. Tell me what's going on. And it turned out that the global CEO of that business, who was fairly new to the role, had said that he thought I was too pretty to be taken seriously.
Oh, ooh.
And that there was no way that I could be the MD because no one would ever take me seriously.
Ooh.
Yeah. Ouch. Right.
Ooh. And he said it out loud. I mean, oftentimes people will think these things, but they don't actually say them.
Said it out loud. He said it out loud. Not only did he say it out loud, so it gets way worse. So he said it out loud. And so my boss, who is a really wonderful person, was like, "This is insane, right? Like, this is completely bananas. Like, this woman has a degree from Harvard Business School and the UC Berkeley Haas School of Business. She's run every single account we have here. Clients love her. And by the way, like, for those people who know me in real life, that's not the feedback that I've ever gotten before, that I'm too pretty to be taken seriously.
No.
You know what I mean? Like, it's just not, that's not it. That's not this girl." And so my boss was like, "This is so asinine. Don't worry about it." The global CEO, and I'm leaving names out of this purposefully, the global CEO decided to take things into its own hands. He hired someone on his own. This person did not interview. They didn't go through any process. Placed someone in the role who was a white male, which is fine. The fact that he's a white male was not the issue, right? But nobody checked his qualifications. There was no
he wasn't too pretty.
Yeah, he wasn't too pretty. That was basically his qualification. So anyway, it devolved from there, and it ended up becoming revealed through a series of lawsuits that, which I did not participate. I actually chose not to sue, but that this individual, the global CEO, had been kind of horrendously discriminatory in a number of different ways, many different women, ethnic minorities.
Ooh.
And I was stuck. So I still worked there. My boss ended up quitting over the whole thing. And he filed suit. I mean, it was a mess. I still worked there and felt completely, utterly stuck because I had been planning on building a career at this place. All of a sudden found myself with a new boss who wasn't a bad person, but he was sort of stuck in the middle of this. And I was obviously extremely resentful. And I was pregnant with my first daughter. And I had this feeling of like, oh my gosh, who's going to hire? And sorry, this had come out in the press. So this whole story had come out in the press. So I just had this feeling of like extraordinary self-doubt. Who's going to hire a woman who's 5 months pregnant, imminently going on maternity leave, like in 4 months, I'm out. And if you Google my name, this is now, part of the public record. And then I found out I was having a girl, and I thought, what's my story going to be here? How can I stay in this incredibly toxic, oppressive environment? How can I stay knowing that every single person in my office knows that I was demoted and someone was placed on top of me because the CEO said I was too pretty to be taken seriously? How can I tell my daughter that I was like, that's cool, I'm just going to stick around? And so I put every ounce of energy I had into finding a new job. And that's what brought me back to the technology world. I became, at the time, I was SVP of marketing for Tradesy, which is a woman-owned and founded female CEO company. And she was thrilled to have a pregnant head of marketing, and was like, you're going to have a baby and you'll take however long maternity leave you have. And I'm confident that you will set the organization up for success while you are gone. And then we'll pick up when you come back, and it's going to be great, because guess what? Having babies is part of the human existence, and it's all good.
That is incredible.
I love that idea of modeling. I think, anyone who is a mother in leadership has had maybe one of those experiences, right? Of like, what is the message I'm not only sending to the people around me in work, but also to my own family who's watching, right?
That's right.
This next generation of kids. So it's really powerful.
Yeah.
I think, you have worked with coaches before, or a coach. Is that true? Yep. And, we are passionate about coaching over here in Helm. And, not only helping women find coaches, but also, we've both been the recipients of great coaches coaching ourselves. Curious for you, in your coaching journey, what's really landed? Like, what have been some of the things that you've learned about yourself and taken you from something to something, right? Like, what's really resonated for you in your journey?
Yeah. Well, I think, for me specifically, the value of coaching has been that sort of blind spot and echo chamber thing, right? Making sure that I have someone who knows me and knows me well, who is actively identifying those things for me. And I do also think, going back to the point about being primed for feedback, when you're in that rhythm with a coach, your nervous system just becomes used to self-reflection and self-improvement. And so your baseline is much more primed for feedback. My baseline is much more primed for feedback than when I'm not working with a coach. And I think that honestly is almost one of the biggest things, right? Just to understand the value of continuous self-reflection, continuous improvement, and to get into a habit of probing those blind spots and echo chambers. So I think that's kind of one of the biggest things for me.
And is there a blind spot that you're comfortable sharing that you worked on or helped that a coach helped you discover and kind of address that might not have been super obvious to you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm an optimist, an eternal optimist. And even more than that, I'm not just an optimist, but I am like anti-catastrophe, right? Like I'm the person, the house could actually be burning down. And I would be like, I do think it's going to be fine. Like with both of my pregnancies, I had emergency C-sections. And I remember with my older daughter, the doctor was like, you need to come into the hospital right now. And I was like, I do think I have time to wash my hair. Like, I think, and she's like, you're not a doctor. You do not have time to wash your hair. I was like, but I think I might. Like, I do think it's going to be fine. She was like, oh my God, get your butt to the hospital right now. So I'm an like huge optimist, always think things are going to be just fine. One of the things that coaching has really helped me with is like, hey, this is not on the track to be just fine. So this person is not on track to be your future leader. Like this is not going well, Kamini. You need to like recognize, take out the optimism, and really dive into the catastrophe. And that's been really great for me because it's not my nature.
Yeah, that is. I mean, some of us who tend to catastrophize really gravitate towards people like that. Though it feels so wonderful to be around, right? The optimism must be contagious, that energy. And speaking of energy, my last question for you is around actually energy management. And, as a CEO, as a parent of two, how do you, manage your energy, manage the lows, manage the highs? I know we've established that you have a superpower in napping and sleeping and getting your REM cycles in, but how else are you kind of modeling that for yourself and for your own team in your role?
I do think that part of it is recognizing what your body needs to be at your best. So I need 8 hours of sleep a night. And so I prioritize that. And I don't try to pretend to be someone who doesn't need 8 hours of sleep a night because it's simply inaccurate. Like, so, I have recognized that about myself and I structure that, right? Like I make sure that I am done with all of my household duties by like 8:30 p.m. Right. So both I do bedtime. I have a 18-month-old and an 8-year-old. I do bedtime for both of them. And so I've hired someone who 3 days a week comes in and helps me cook dinner. I'm really passionate about cooking like fresh meals for my family. So I do all the cooking. I shouldn't say all the cooking. Peter's making stir fry tonight. It's going to be great. But I do a lot of the cooking in the house, but I have somebody who comes 3 nights a week and will help do all of the after dinner dishes so that I can be wrapped up, so that I can do bedtime for both the girls and then everything is done. Peter and I can have time together at the end of the day. So he's not in the kitchen doing dishes at 9:30 p.m. And so being really, really intentional about structuring that. The second thing I think is getting the help that I need. So, it was really, really hard for me to say, okay, these are all of the people that I need in my house to help me. And I think particularly as a woman, I don't know very many female CEOs who don't still cook most of the meals for their family and do most of the grocery shopping and do bedtime. And by the way, I have, as I've said, the most incredible husband on the planet. I mean, he is such a amazing but useful person. I mean, he is like running the household with me. But as women, we still take a lot of that burden on ourselves, even as CEOs. And so for me, one of the things that was hard was saying, it's okay. It's okay that I have a full-time nanny. And it's okay that I have somebody who comes and helps me with the dishes. And by the way, if I'm traveling a ton, I will ask her to come and help me do my laundry, fold it, and put it away. And then when I realized that actually did take her 3 hours, I realized I've saved that 3 hours for myself. And that's a good thing. That is a good thing for me to do for me and for my family. So, I think it's those types of things, like really, really recognizing what are my mandatories that help with energy management. But it's not easy. It's not easy. And there is no silver bullet. There is no magic answer.
Yeah, that's very true.
All right. This is for real, the last question. We would love to know, what advice would you give your 25-year-old self?
Let's see, what was I doing when I was 25 years old? Oh, I was in business school. I was in business school. Is that right? No, that's not right. Sorry, 25. No, I was in business school. Yes. I was in my second year at Harvard Business School. So let's make it my 27-year-old self, because my 25-year-old self was living her best life, let me tell you.
Let's go to 27.
Fantastic. For sure. and I will tell you that girl knew what was up, because part of the reason that I was living my best life at 25 years old because I had let go of so much pressure on myself. At new student orientation in Harvard Business School in that year, the dean of students came on and said, every single one of you in this auditorium has been above average your entire life. And guess what? Now in this room, by definition, most of you are average. And I was like, yes, freedom. I mean, it was literally, I will never forget that moment in my life where I was like, I am going to be so average for the next 2 years. It's going to be great. Because guess what? I'm still going to graduate with a degree from Harvard Business School. And it is going to be the best, most average degree you've ever seen in your entire life. And I had a great time. I learned a ton. I actually did well. But I was never focused on becoming a Baker Scholar or getting all ones. So it's 1, 2, 3 scale, getting all ones in all of my classes. I was just focused on living life, enjoying myself, and learning and amassing experiences. So that girl knew what was up.
So good.
I would say my what I could tell my 27-year-old self is, if something feels unnatural, like if I feel like I'm having to work too hard and it's never clicking, it's never going to click. That is true in relationships. That is true in work. It's true with friendships. And what I would tell my 27-year-old self is to listen to that. Like, put your all into it. And then if it still doesn't click, take that as a very strong binary message. It's not clicking, and so it's not going to click. And, spoiler alert, I definitely did not marry the person that I was dating when I was 27 years old. I'm not doing what I did when I was 27 years old. Don't live where I did when I was 27 years old, and couldn't be happier.
It's almost like when you're saying, if it's not clicking, like go a little further on that. Like, what does clicking feel like? What is that like?
You know it. You know it.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is that so much of I was going to say being a good leader, but it's like being a happy leader. It's just knowing yourself and trusting yourself and recognizing what it feels like for something to click, and trusting yourself when you know you're not feeling that. And
it's almost
everybody, if you just
it's like
get
quiet,
quiet,
your inner mentor, right? Like it's right there with you all the time. And if you just get quiet and listen to her, she's got some really good things to share with you.
Absolutely. And I think that is, it's funny. I don't meditate a lot. But when I do, it is literally, the definition of it is forcing yourself to get quiet. And I feel like I hear so much wisdom from myself when I just get quiet. And so it is just training yourself to recognize what that click feels like, and to be okay when you're not feeling it, and moving on in whatever way is appropriate for the situation.
Awesome. Thank you.